Prepare to get a little bit more spooky with these entries as we move on to an era defined more by the supernatural than the practical, starting with ghastly warnings from the beyond and progressing all the way to beats that could soothe the Lord of the Underworld himself. My name is Theron Ferry, and this is Human History with Death and the Afterlife, Part 3. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Witch of Endor was a woman practicing necromancy, specifically communication with the dead, around 1007 BCE. One day, King Saul of the United Monarchy met with her, which was quite hypocritical considering he himself had personally banned the act of necromancy. However, after failing to contact God through any of the traditional channels, he was so concerned about an upcoming battle with the Philistines that he was left with no other choice in his mind. He asked her to contact the prophet Samuel from beyond the grave, but when she does, the spirit that answers is basically just annoyed to be woken up before his alarm went off. Now, Samuel had already given Saul some bad news while he was still alive, which was that he would eventually lose his kingship. The spirit, however, decides to double down and let Saul know that his army has zero chance, none, and tomorrow they'll all be chilling in the afterlife together. Saul then passes out from fear and the witch makes him some food to calm him down. The next day, his army was defeated and Saul committed suicide after one of his men refused to help end his life. Since then, people have speculated the spirit may have been a demon impersonating Samuel, or even some form of elaborate ventriloquism being conducted by the witch herself. Spiritualists who believe that our consciousness sticks around after death and can be contacted cite this as an example of mediumship in ancient times, still to this day. The key takeaway of the story is to never compromise your own morals to seek a shortcut in life, because it rarely ends well when you do, especially in times of desperation. An ossuary is a box, building, well, or site designed to be used as the final resting place for human corpses. A single tomb can hold considerably more bodies per square foot than a gravesite ever could. Because of this, they usually show up in areas where there isn't a ton of space for cemeteries. Some of the earliest ossuaries date back to around 1000 BCE and belong to the Zoroastrians, who would allow bodies to be picked clean by scavenging birds, then deposit them into an astodon pit within a raised structure. Most of the time, though, a body is buried in a temporary timeshare of a grave, and then once they have mostly decomposed, they are moved into the ossuary. This process is sometimes referred to as grave recycling. One notable example would be the Sedlik ossuary, located in the Czech Republic. It is most notable for its macabre decoration made from human bones, the most extravagant of which is a chandelier that supposedly contains at least one of every bone that can be sourced from the human body. An equally impressive piece is a humongous coat of arms for the Schwarzenborg family. The ossuary stays ahead of any claims of grave desecration with the following statement on their official website. Those 40,000 dead people wish to be buried in a holy place, so they went to Sedlik in the first place, and now their bones are right in the middle of the chapel. Another intriguing ossuary would be Our Lady of the Conception of the Capuchins in Rome, which holds the bones of approximately 4,000 friars. A plaque outside ominously reads, "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you shall be." This statement serves as a reflection on the temporary and fleeting essence of life, and a reminder that we should treat every second as if it's a gift. Hades is the name the ancient Greeks gave to both the god of the underworld and the underworld itself in their mythology. One of the earliest and most notable depictions of Hades was in the Iliad and the Odyssey, which according to Greek historians was written around 850 BCE. They believed your consciousness would be separated from your body at the exact moment of death and deposited into the underworld, where you stay the same age and condition as you were when you died, forever. So you better hope you didn't get a bad haircut that morning. Early stories would usually group all of the dead together in the afterlife, but over time stories began to adopt the idea of people being separated based on their morality, both with regards to location and how they would be treated. However, beliefs may have varied greatly from one community to another due to the Greeks having no centralized religious authority. The newly departed would have to enter into the realm of Hades by crossing both the Acheron and Styx rivers. To accomplish this, they would have to pay Hades' resident ferryman, Charon, to take them across. Charon didn't do this for free though, the man had bills to pay and therefore would require payment. Greek families would usually account for this by leaving a small coin either over the eye or under the tongue of the deceased. If not, they would be forced to wait 100 years before they would be allowed to cross. Escape from Hades was made almost impossible considering the exit was guarded by an intimidating three-headed dog named Cerberus. However, several attempts have been made across the mythological zeitgeist, the most compelling of which would have to be when Orpheus traveled to Hades in an attempt to save his wife who had succumbed to a snake bite on the day of their wedding. Upon her death, Orpheus basically became the original Derek Sanders from Mayday Parade, in that his songs of heartbreak began to compel not only the living, but the gods themselves. He went into hell with a track so hot that even Cerberus and Hades were compelled to let him see his wife again. However, he had to walk the whole way back out of the underworld without turning around to see her. He assumed this would be an easy task, but slowly started to panic as he got closer and closer to the exit without hearing her footsteps behind him. With just a few steps to go, he turned around and she vanished before his very eyes. Emotionally bruised and scarred worse than ever, Orpheus wouldn't take very long to return to Hades. This time, permanently. It is important not to confuse Hades as specifically a hell-like realm because the actual Greek version of hell was known as Tartarus, which was basically in the basement of Hades. This is where your soul would end up if you truly outraged the gods in your lifetime. It is a deep abyss used primarily for the purpose of causing suffering and torment to those who choose to live wicked lives. Some examples include King Sisyphus, who was forced to push a boulder up a large steep mountain until the end of time, always watching it roll back down just before he can get it to the top. King Tantalus, on the other hand, represents a more psychological horror in the afterlife. He is forced to stand forever under a fruit tree in knee-high water. The twist, though, is that anytime he reaches up for fruit, the branches would rise away from his hands, and the same thing would occur to the water if he bends over to take a sip. This would be pure torture on its own, right? But apparently there is also a giant boulder just dangling over his head as well, which kinda seems like overkill to me, but the man did feed his dead son to the gods, so it's up in the air, I suppose. The Elysian Fields, also known as Elysium or the Elysian Plains, is the most heavenly section of Hades, where souls would live a blessed and happy life for eternity, indulging in whatever things they enjoyed most during life. The realm was originally reserved for mortals related to the gods, so Nepo babies, and legendary heroes. Over time, though, the terms changed, and it was believed that anyone who lived a righteous or heroic life would be chosen by the gods to enter. As with most early incarnations of paradise, the majority of descriptions just describe it as a place where you don't have to worry as much about where your next meal will come from, and the weather is constantly nice. The biggest upsell mentioned in Homer's 850 BCE classic The Odyssey is that the breeze from the sea is particularly refreshing, truly a land of pure delight and wonder. Necromancy is the act of attempting to talk to the dead by summoning their spirits as ghostly apparitions or hallucination-like visions, usually for the purpose of learning about the future or learning hidden knowledge. One of the oldest written accounts of necromancy is from the little-known 850 BCE tale, The Odyssey, by Homer, in which Odysseus travels to the underworld to seek counsel with people he knew before they passed away. Ancient rituals could be quite elaborate, involving such spectacles as magic circles, wands, talismans, and incantations. Some of the necromancers could be real sickos, wearing the clothing of the deceased and consuming rotten or spoiled foods to symbolize the death they were trying to make contact with. Some accounts even claim necromancers went as far as to mutilate and eat the corpses to connect with the dead. These rituals could take as long as several weeks before any contact with the spirit was actually made, especially if the spirit had been deceased for longer than a year, as those spirits were much harder to get in touch with. Modern examples of contacting the dead for answers tend to take the form of mediums claiming they can contact the dead psychically. As recently as 2022, Netflix released an entire show based around a medium named Tyler Henry, attempting to help people deal with their grief by providing closure to those who have lost someone. Detractors will always claim people like this are just preying on others in a mentally vulnerable state for profit, while skeptic defenders tend to take the admittedly fairly weak stance that any form of comfort for the grieving is a net positive. At the end of the day, people are free to make their own opinions on the practice. Thank you so much for watching this video. I absolutely appreciate it, probably more than anything else in the entire world if I'm being completely honest. It's crazy we managed to push ourselves forward another couple centuries, about 200 and some years if I remember correctly. And on top of that, 3 separate entries from the Odyssey, which is absolutely crazy. My man Homer was cooking. You gotta love it. You love to see it, you hate to be it, as some would say. But yeah, thank you so much once again. Please subscribe if you found anything interesting or you're interested to learn more. See you later, gangsters.